So, who actually caught the film last night?
Oh, yay. Thanks, everybody. You survived it.
So, the kind of obvious first question is, sequels are can be
Terrifying,
a landmine.
exactly.
Everybody wants to do Godfather 2, but a lot of people end up doing Troll 2. so what made you go, okay, this is one I want to go back and revisit?
Yeah, I mean, I love those characters, and I love Anna and I love Blake, and working with them was so much fun on the first one. And this movie got such a second life on streaming that it just kind of kept building and building in popularity. And that's I don't like that to be a touchstone for doing something. Sometimes it's better just step away. I'm actually very much a fan of James Brown, who used to say "hit it and quit it," and I think that's like a good philosophy to have in showbiz. But I don't know. This one we suddenly had an idea, and it was like this could be really fun. And I'd always been wanting to do something. I said it last night, if anybody was at the thing last night, but Giovanna Battaglia, who was a fashion editor at Vogue in Paris or whatever, got married to this ultra-rich, like, Swedish dude who was a hedge fund guy, and they took over the whole island of Capri. And it just looked so spectacular. I was like, I want to do something like that, but I don't know what the story would be. And then so when we were coming up with the story, it's like, oh, I can put that there, and we'll have all this crazy stuff happen. And but we worked the script forever, and I tried to kill that project many times. I was terrified. It's like if a movie's I feel like all you can do is let people down with a sequel generally. And like you said, I was like, we got to make Godfather 2 if we're gonna do this. But also, I wanted it just to be even more twisty and turny and just kind of, I don't know, is what I like. I'm becoming even more of a maximalist as my career goes on because I love genre movies so much, and I admire what genre movies do and how they just go for it. And I've always tried not to care about creating things that the critics are going to like and they win awards, because I think when you do that you end up pleasing kind of nobody, because your first thing as a filmmaker, storyteller, is to entertain the audience. That is your mission. If you want to get a message in there, you want to make people feel, say something, great, you should. But entertain the audience first. Don't be homework. Don't be lecturing. Because then it becomes a homework movie. And then around Oscar time is always like, hey, I got to watch these movies, but like, they feel like homework sometimes, Like I'd rather watch Abigail, But we dove in, and I was really happy with what we got to do.
But speaking of homework, there's whenever you're doing a sequel, part of the problem with the scripting process that people have to tackle is how much do I presume not simply the audience has seen the first film, but remembers the first film. And I was wondering how you tackled that, going like, okay, at what point do I have to stop and somebody drops some nugget to just remind you or rehash something? And I felt you did that very subtly, but...
Yeah, you never want to, you don't want it to be like previously on, And I always kind of go from the thing of like, I just have to assume everybody who's coming to this has seen it. And then, if you can just drop in a hint here or there. But we really, generally, I just kind of go, okay, I just have to assume they've seen it, because, there's nothing worse is an audience member who loves something, and then you're like, all right, let's go. So, you just kind of go for it and just go, okay, they'll watch the first one. They'll catch up.
And when the first one came out, we talked, and I said, look, I really want to see a series of Smothers Mysteries. How much of this was, if you couldn't get both of them, that this was just not going to happen?
I would never have done it if I couldn't get both of them. No, it's I don't like when sequels change stuff up so much, and to me, it's, if we're going to do a sequel, let's bring everybody back, who didn't die in the first one. And so we got everybody back. The only person who couldn't come back because of scheduling was Jean Smart, but then we got Elizabeth Perkins to step in, who just destroyed it. I mean, she's so funny and so good in the role. I like that consistency, and that's the whole reason I wanted to do the thing, is just do the movie, was because Blake and Anna are so great.
And on the first film, what was the point when you realized they were so good together and bring out the sparkiness of each other so beautifully?
Yeah, it was really when we were shooting in the house with them, and that first scene where they're kind of bonding over, over martinis, and Anna kind of alludes to her dark past. Their chemistry was so fun, and the way they were playing off each other. And when I shoot scenes like that, I cross shoot, so I have cameras on each of them at the same time, so that they can surprise each other, and we'll be in the moment, and like something happens once, and you have both sides of it. And I think doing that just creates so much more connection between the characters and more investment for the audience, because that's what I did on Bridesmaids all over the place. We cross shot that like crazy. Opening scene where Kristen and Annie, Kristen and Maya are talking in the coffee shop. That was just 5 hours of cross shot, kind of try this, try that, and the audience just falls in love with them without you having to go, oh, Annie, I've known you for 20 years, all this backstory. You just want to create this connection between characters that the audience just invests in them. I mean, that's the hardest thing about a movie, and what I love about movies is you have the task of introducing a lead character that the audience has to fall in love with immediately, or the movie falls apart. And so that's why there's so many movies, especially in comedy, where the first time you meet anybody, everything is going wrong for them, because what's more sympathetic than, oh, this poor person, everything's going wrong, but it's how you make that connection. That's why it's so hard to do a movie about, like, he's the top lawyer in town and he's the coolest guy in the world. It's like, you're like, well, fuck you, I don't like you at all. But I love that. I mean, I love, kind of going off topic here, but I love the art of movie making more than doing TV or anything, because of that thing. You have the limited amount of time in which to introduce people to characters, make them fall in love with them, get them invested, take them through a whole story, and then wrap it up in a way that is satisfying to them. It's kind of the hardest thing to do. I mean, whether it's a movie or a play or anything, TV, you can kind of string it out, and TV is fantastic, and I love working in TV too, but the ultimate challenge is telling a story, a complete story, in a 2-hour-ish space.
And the first film had a very Hitchcock element to it. I mean, you have your Grace Kelly moment when you introduce Emily, and you it's like the world stops. Yeah. And you play that so well that Anna is just looking at him, and she's the audience going, the world stops, and like really keying into what Hitchcock did with that kind of sense of glamour. But this time around, did you have to change that kind of that feel, because you can't? Hitchcock didn't do this. He didn't have. Anthony Perkins didn't come back for his Psycho too.
Exactly. Oh, if only. No, I mean, Hitchcock has always been a big influence to me, mostly because of how he stocked his characters. Meaning that there was always really funny side characters, and the lead characters, in general, if you go back to North by Northwest, I mean, Cary Grant's really entertaining while he's having all this terrible stuff happen to him, and he's funny and he's light, and that's the biggest thing I take away from what Hitchcock did, and what I try to bring back to movies, because I feel like so many thrillers, because I love thrillers, are like my favorite genre, hands down, and but so many thrillers now, and over the past couple of decades, have been so serious in a way, and I don't mean serious like the stakes aren't high; they have to be high, but like they almost try to take all the humor out of them, and like. I like when a movie's like real life. Like, if you're in the worst situation in the world, somebody's going to make a joke, and somebody's going to laugh, somebody's going to do something, because you have to release that pressure. And also, it's all about extreme characters, and that's, to me, is what comedy is just extreme characters in extreme situations and how they react and interact. That's where you get the fun from. It's not about jokes. It's about like going, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, or I can't believe they're going through that, or like, oh, that poor thing. You laugh out of sympathy, or you laugh out of just like horror. That's why so much of comedy right now is horror. It's in horror movie. Horror movies are the new comedies. Yeah. And I guarantee, and I tell you, anybody who watches a horror movie, you got to know the filmmakers are in the editing room laughing their ass off the whole time, because they're manipulating you in a great way. You're like, oh my God, I know we're just going to scare the shit out of them, and they're going to be scared, and then you're going to laugh. Because I mean, how many times after you're scared you laugh? And the two are so connected, and that's the catnip to me. That's why I really like going into the thriller genre and trying to make it fun. But scary with high stakes and all that, and weird.
Horror directors are always the sweetest people as well.
They are, because
to a man.
It's like therapy. You get it all out. They just traumatize the audience.
So the beginning of the film, Emily comes back. That you'd written, as you always did with the first film, you'd put a line under this. How did you crack the problem of how do I get her back in the room?
I know. Well, I got to give all props to Jessica Sharzer on that one because that was the thing. Like, we want to do this. Like, how do we get her out of jail? And she came up with the idea. Like, no, she reconnected with some really rich guy who sent in a team of lawyers and kind of found a hole in her case and got her out for a reprieve while they look at the case. So that was kind of like, okay, cool. I mean, these days, like, any movie where somebody dies in the end, like the next, superhero movies, Jesus Christ, like, what are the stakes? Everybody's dead. Oh, and they're back alive next time because they went through a portal or something. So, it's kind of, in a way, I almost go like, oh, I don't. There has to be a real legitimate reason to bring somebody back because I get mad when I really invested in that death of that character, and then like, oh, some wizard waved a wand and now they're alive again.
And we've got to talk about Capri. I mean, you said you kind of like you had your justification for your justification was, I want to do this, which is a great reason for a filmmaker to do anything. It's like, I actually want to do this. It's not, I need to do this because this is the last script I got handed.
Yeah.
But I was wondering about the practicalities of shooting on Capri, because a lot of filmmakers go, oh, I found this really gorgeous location, and then they're like, yeah, everything's on top of a mountain.
Yeah.
The nearest camera rental place is 300 miles away, and I've got to have it bought in by donkey.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about that, like the practical side.
That's called shooting at Capri. It's not a vacation movie. There's some movies you go like, okay, everybody just clearly said we're all going to have a vacation to make a movie in this beautiful place, which I guess then maybe in the beginning of the process, like, oh, this would be really fun to be there. I can tell you, like, the worst thing in the world to do is shoot work where you normally vacation because it's like your brain goes into this like, oh, this is so great, I'm here. Wait, what? I got to deal with all these problems and everything, and then God bless Capri. I mean, they're great, and Lori, my wife, and I are going there for 30 years. Every year, we just love it. Know everybody there, but you go in and you have to shut down some streets, and suddenly everybody in Capri hates your guts, because there's only so many routes through things, and we were shooting in the main piazzetta, and that's where it's like a freeway. All these carts that go around that bring stuff because you can't have cars in there, and then tourists, and we weren't even in the season, and. I mean, we would stop for a 3-minute take, and suddenly, there's a million carts both ways, thousands of people, tourists stacked up. Everybody's waiting. They want to murder you, and they go, okay, clear them through. And like it takes 10 minutes to get everybody through, and then you got to stop it. And then some local, there's one store owner who came out and just like stood right in the middle of our set and would not leave, And it's like, can we pay you? It's like, no, it's not fair that you're here. It's like, guys, I'm just trying to make a movie that's going to bring you some tourists. So, but that was only one dude, and he was terrible. But everybody else was great. So I love Capri so much, and it was a joy to shoot there. Oh,
and I bet that now they're all going to have like a still from the film up in their window, going like, oh, this is where they filmed it.
There you go. As seen in.
They'll all be on board with it right now.
We'll see what the hotel thinks about all the terrible things that happen inside it. Lori and I aren't sure if they actually read the script before they let us shoot in the Quincy sauna, but.
Yeah, but if you go to Tombstone, like they all show Gunfight at the OK Corral at every hotel and every bar, so I think they're all fine with it.
Exactly. Whatever what makes it work.
But I mean, having such a personal relationship with Capri, like how did that affect like when you were going like, there's things I want to get in that are almost just Easter eggs for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. Just places I love and people I love. We walk past Aurora, and Mia, who owns Aurora, is waiting on somebody, and I go past Isaiah, and my friend Julia is standing out front talking to somebody. So you kind of get those things in just because you love them, but also everything there is so beautiful. Like, it's not like kind of shooting a sign. You're really shooting something really nice. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, you should know that I'm royalty on Capri. I voted the king of comedy on Capri. Yes, at the Capri Film Festival. My friend Pascal, who runs that, wanted to give me an award, and it's the Capri King of Comedy. And then he also runs one on Ischia, which is an island right next to it, and I was supposed to go to that, and he was going to make me the Zelensky of King of Comedy. So it's kind of like Game of Thrones. I'm going to have to depose the other kings of comedy on other islands. It's going to be my next series.
You're just going to slowly work your way across the Adriatic.
Yes, exactly. Right, really. Somewhere I'll be the king of drama, maybe. We'll see.
Or maybe you're just going to pledge fealty once a year. And
Exactly.
But I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday after the film, and they went, is there going to be anything as memorable as Emily's cuffs this time around on the fashion side of it? The first film, just the contrast between their outfits and how memorable Emily's outfits are. Yeah. Like, I mean, you are the best dressed man at South by. And I had to say, I think you're the second.
Oh my! Thank you so much. I'll take it.
And I have to say, I argue for you being the second best dressed man in Hollywood, because Coleman Domingo.
Oh, I know. Coleman,
yeah,
forget
Coleman
it. I do not even compete with that man.
But it was only about the approach to fashion and the approach to costume design, because it's so much part of this in this like jaw-dropping ways, and every 5 minutes you're like, something else cool for Blake to wear.
Yeah, I mean the costumes are as much of the characters as the actors are, and that's why I really, tell my actors, like, I want you to develop your look. I'll work with you, and you'll work with Renee Kalfas, my great costume designer, but I want you to tell us what you want to wear. Because I was an actor for 15 years. You're so affected by your clothes. It's everything. So to suddenly go, you're going to wear this, it's like, all right, well, I'm so much about empowering my actors. I want that collaboration with them so that they will be at their best. I will not do anything that will pull them back at all whatsoever. I mean, even if I get, like when I worked with Chris Hemsworth on Ghostbusters, I had lunch with him and he was so funny. And I was like, I want you to play this with your accent. I don't want anything that's going to be an impediment to you being your best, But like when you work with Rose Byrne, like she's so good at the accents that she actually uses those, and they actually plus up her characters. But those are decisions you make in the moment, with them when you're meeting with them, and go like, how will you be the best at this? And I will adapt the script or whatever thoughts I had about it to you, because there's the worst thing in the world is to hire talented people and then sit on them. It's such a movie making and storytelling and filmmaking is such a collaboration. It has to be, and there's so many writer directors are sort of the worst of the bunch sometimes. They're like, you're gonna say it just like I wrote it, and it's like, no, that's not how that talks. When I was a TV director, I had a few terrible times because the showrunners so wanted a joke said these exact words, and I had like a comedy person who had a very unique way of talking, and they're like, well, you got to make them say it like this. It's like, they don't talk like that, and like, you sit in your room, you can write this stuff, you don't even say it out loud. I mean, that's the thing that drives me crazy. Writers who clearly don't actually speak the lines when they write them. Because you see people, you see movies sometimes, people torturing out these words, and you're like, you could have said that a different way, but that's the difference between somebody's like, you just say it like this, versus like, hey, how can you make this better? And if it's a joke that needs a very specific punchline or emphasis, then you just kind of make that. You work with them and go like, well, how can we get there? And that's how it has to be. You can't be such a control freak that you just you don't use the natural talents of the very talented people that you hire.
Well, it's even though the Aristocrats always has the same punchline, everybody has a different aristocrat.
There you go. So exactly.
So I mean, when you first started working with Blake and Anna, like, what did you realize was what they did with delivery that was special individually?
Yeah, I mean, they're both so unique. Anna is she's great at just like giving you something different each time, and not even necessarily changing lines. It's funny, on the first one, she had just come off a kind of a bad experience on another movie where they were throwing her tons of alt jokes and stuff, and she was like, I don't want to do any of that, which I do a lot. And she was like, I just want to stick to the script. I was like, cool, that's great, because it was a thriller, so it didn't really matter. But what she would do is each time she would make the performance different. And so it was like, it might as well be changing the lines, because the intention was so different, and kind of the attitude was, some were more nerdy, some were less nerdy, some were really over the top, some were really, contained. that's all I need, in the editing room. Go like, okay, this isn't working this level or this tone, so now let's bring it down to here. And that's why I don't rehearse. I never rehearse, like even for blocking. It's like, okay, just where would you stand? You'd go here, you'd go there. Okay, don't do it, because in the beginning of my career, the camera people always like, we need one rehearsal, and suddenly it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen, and you're like, nobody's rolling, and then okay, let's get it again, and it's never quite the same, because that's the first time they did it versus now they're falling into a pattern or whatever. And so now I'm just like, I'd rather have a terrible take where the camera work all falls apart, but if somebody does something amazing, I got it. So, and so, long way to say that was so great about working with Anna. She was that. Now this one, she came in a little more kind of wanting to play, and that was really fun too. So she was trying out different lines and different jokes and stuff in various moments, and it was fun. It was fun to see that other side of her, and she was really great at it. And then Blake is just such a great collaborator, because she's really thoughtful in the lead up to it. She really studies the characters, and then we get together and kind of go, well, what do you think about this? And then we kind of horse trade between, oh, I actually think this would happen to this. Then I go back and rewrite it, and then she's got her thoughts on it, and we pass it back and forth a lot. So by the time we get to the set, we're kind of all set to go. And then she'll still play around, which I love. That's catnip for me, and so it's just, she's so inventive in that way. And then her ideas on wardrobe are spectacular. I mean, she was, when you see the movie, if you've seen it, when she first shows up, she's like, I want to show up in a prison outfit, a suit that looks like a prison outfit. And so Renee Calvin's, okay, well, let's figure what that is. And then she finds this amazing striped, fabric out of Italy. And then Blake finds these crazy chains and shackles and stuff. And it's fantastic, but it's one of these things, like when somebody first says it, you're like, that's weird. And then you go like, oh my God, but it's actually brilliant. And then she wanted to dress like a mobster when she's on the plane about to, go off to Italy and see her mafia boyfriend and stuff. And it's just that collaboration of like an idea that then my talented costume people go off and they make happen, and then Blake comes back in, and then I weigh in on it. It's again, it's a big collaboration, and that's what's so fun about movie making, and that's why it's so crazy for anybody to just be dictatorial, like, you're gonna wear this, you're gonna say this, and blah blah blah. Like, okay, great, but I can point to so many moments in the movie. I go like, that happened on the set. That was her idea. That was his idea. I didn't even think of that. It just happened in the moment, and that's the best stuff. So, but that's what keeps a movie alive and feeling alive, I think, personally.
You say not doing rehearsals. That's fascinating, because you kind of got to do two arguments there. You've got to convince producers and studios and showrunners that, like, yeah, I don't need to do this, because they're all going to be sat there going like, does he really have it? But you've also got to convince yourself. I was wondering when that moment that you managed to convince yourself and convince other people in your career that you were like, this is okay, you can trust me, it's going to be all right.
Yeah, I mean, you have to build that trust, because everybody in the industry who's in charge always thinks filmmakers trying to pull a fast one on them. Yeah. It's always like, you're going to make your art movie now, right? You're going to make the movie that's not commercial, and you're going to, screw us. And it's like, I mean, I can't speak for every filmmaker. I'm like, why would I want to do that? If I don't have a successful movie, I'm not going to make a movie for anybody again. But, they get to learn your process, and as long as the end result is good, they start to go like, okay, like people know, like, the studios know, they get my dailies, they're going to get 10, 12 takes, and the first few are going to be a mess, but all I'm looking for on the set is a moment, I mean, once we start going, you get the scene, but then as we keep going, I'm like, I don't have this line yet, or in a way that I like, or I don't like the attitude of this one moment, and so we'll run a whole take that's all over the place, and then I'm just going like, got it, okay, got that one thing I need, I don't care about anything else. And sometimes if there's producers or studio execs on the set, they're like, they watch a take as if it's going to be, that's what's going to be on the screen, that whole unedited take, and they're like, I don't think you got it because this, and I go like, I got it 2 takes ago, and I got the thing I need here, so don't worry about it. But it takes a lot of trust. Unfortunately, my movies have made people money over the years, so get you a little more leeway, but they never stop thinking that you're going to screw them on this one. So they never, and it's you get older, they think it even more so, because either you're too old to be in touch, or now he doesn't care anymore, and like he's going to go off the rails, and so. The joys of making studio movies. And I love it. I love it. I love the stakes of it. It's so much fun.
Ever tempted to do anything smaller, or are you just like the scale that you can work at?
For what's that?
I ever feel like doing something smaller, or is it just like
Well,
this is your vibe is like needs that bigger environment?
Well, what's happening now is if you want a bigger budget, and this is even changing now, but the streamers would give you the bigger budget because it's going to be a buyout, and they're trying to lure bigger stars and bigger names in. But I love streaming, and I've been so happy to do things for streaming. But I want to get back to theaters. That's my bread and butter. I mean, last night is such a joy for me to come to South by Southwest. It's the best festival in the world, hands down, because the audiences are so fantastic, and people just show up wanting to have fun. You know what? And so many other festivals is like, okay, let me see, I'm a cinephile. Like, oh, fuck off. Just have fun, for Christ's sake. So I'm really, trying to get back to that. And what happens now is if you want to be theatrical, you're going to get a smaller budget. And but it's going to be with a back end deal, which I like. It's a meritocracy now. Like I'm putting, you got to put your money where your mouth is. Like you're not going to make the money you would have made from a streamer up front, but like in success, you can make some money on the back end that could equal that. But then you get the experience of people get to see it on the big screen, and then there's an aftermarket for it. And that's my biggest thing is I miss the aftermarket that you get with theatrical, meaning, it used to be first you're in theatrical, then you're on pay-per-view, then the DVD comes out, and then it goes to cable, and then it's on network. So there's all these chances for people to find the movie again. And with streaming, the only bummer is you got that opening weekend, and you're the tile, and you do well, and then you're just a tile that doesn't necessarily pop up other than on algorithms. But I love going on a plane, and like some of my movies are on the airplane, and I think the streamers are starting to put movies on airplane now. I think Amazon's starting to do it occasionally, which is great because other than a movie theater, what's the better place to watch a movie than on an airplane? I hate to say.
I mean, shooting for cinema just means you can compose the shot differently. You can take right from those first principles. You can go, and particularly something like Capri, you don't want everything to be tight two shots.
No. It's funny. So many people always ask me, like, so do you shoot a movie different for streaming? It's like, you don't at all. The only thing you shoot differently is inserts of a phone, because if somebody's watching on their phone and I get an insert you're supposed to read, it's got to be fucking really big, or nobody's able to see it. But no, you really can't adjust your filmmaking for a small screen because it's always going to play on a big screen at some point, whether it's the premiere or just, if you're doing a word of mouth screening or just you want to show it to somebody on the big screen. That's the big screen is the greatest thing in the world. The nice thing now is people have got big home entertainment systems so they can watch it big. So that's cool. But the group experience, that's really what I'm always after.
What was your best theatrical experience for one of your films? Last night discounts.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I would actually probably say when we brought Bridesmaids to South by Southwest. Yeah, that was a magical night because, I mean, the place just exploded. It was fantastic. The hilarious side note on that, so we said it was, we brought it as a work in progress screening so that it couldn't be reviewed or anything, but it was finished. I mean, we had to do some color timing. And I was so proud of it that I was like, when I introduced it, I said, like, now look, it's supposed to be a word of mouth screening, but actually the movie's finished, which meant that they could suddenly review it, which the studio loved that I said that. But there was only one reviewer in the audience, some guy from Variety, whose review said, there is not one laugh in this movie. It was like, what the? And Judd called the guy up. He goes like, look, man, you got some kind of problem in your life. If you could sit there and say that nobody was laughing in this movie. So, God bless him.
But that's the thing. Comedy is scary.
Yeah.
And, if a joke doesn't land, there's no worse thud on the planet than when a joke just hits the floor.
Oh yeah.
And how scary is it for you as a comedic filmmaker to go like, I'm going to trust that this is going to get out there, and particularly because talking to a lot of filmmakers in festival season over the years, they have spent so much time with their film, they don't know if it's good or it's bad. They've seen 10,000 edits. Yeah. They're still seeing like takes that they cut out 5 years ago that like they just don't live with. How do you know still that something's going to be funny when you get it to an audience?
2 words: test screenings. I am addicted to test screenings because I was a stand-up comedian. And that's how you worked out your act. You'd write your act, and then you go up on stage and go like, okay, that didn't work, that didn't work, change that, go up, go rewrite it, put this joke in, do that. That's how I make my movies, especially my comedies. And so that's why when we're on the set, I'm pitching different jokes and we're trying different things because, if you put together your first cut, your director's cut, and the DGA gives you 10 weeks to do your cut where nobody can interfere with you and the studio can leave you alone. I always try to do mine about 5 weeks in because I don't want 10 weeks to polish something if it's not going to work. I can sit there all the day and tell you, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. Oh my God, this scene's going to kill. If I get in front of a test audience, the thing I think is going to kill dies immediately. Yeah. The thing I didn't think was going to be funny gets a giant response. And then I go like, okay, we got a lot of work to do. But if I do it 5 weeks in, I'm not in love with everything in the movie. I'm basically going, I think this kind of works. Let's see what people think. So I'm saving myself from falling in love. That you do the 10 weeks, you're just polishing. You're in love with everything. And then it's just like you go into test screening like, oh, no. You're like, oh, they didn't get a laugh, but the studio's going to make us cut it out. And it's like, dude, just you gotta listen to the audience, and some people get on me about it. Kind of, it sounds hacky, I think, to some people of like, oh, you're just letting people tell you. I'm making movies for an audience, and if I get a room full of 300 people at a test screening who don't know me, friends and family screenings are useless. If you're a filmmaker, do it for fun, but don't go like, hey, this really worked, because your friends are all going to tell you it was great. Or they're just going to laugh because they can't believe you did something, But a room full of people who don't know you, man, whew, they are scary as hell. They're sitting there like this, But if they laugh and they like something, you go, okay, that worked. If something didn't get a laugh, but that I think is great, and I go like, they just didn't get it, I'll put it in the next test screening. And if they still don't laugh, it's like, well, I guess I'm the one who thinks that's funny. Take it out, because it's what my editor Bill Kerr, who did Bridesmaids, he called the Angry Villagers, and it's basically, you start a movie and it's a comedy. Everybody's like, oh boy, this is gonna be really funny, and so the first joke comes, and they go like, well, that wasn't that funny. Okay, well, what's the next joke? Next joke hits is like, that wasn't very funny. And you get enough of those, and suddenly the villagers light torches and they want to burn the village down, because they're like, we don't trust you, the filmmaker, because you're telling me something's funny that's not funny. So I don't trust anything you're going to do right now. And then you completely lose the audience. So that's, going into the movie is the most important time. You build that trust immediately with an audience. And so that's why, I just have to do these test screenings. And, I'll test a movie. Bridesmaids, we tested 9 or 10 times, meaning do the screening, record the laughs. That didn't get a laugh. Let's try a different joke there. That went too long. That was too short. We could make this longer. The whole dress shop, the scene with everybody throwing up and all that stuff. That went through 9 different iterations because we had a lot of stuff. And like sometimes we cut it too short and go, I think we can make this longer. And then sometimes we go, okay, we went way too far. Pull it back. And it just trying to get that balance right. And it sounds very clinical and sounds very corporate, but it's just how you're fine tuning. That's what plays do when they're in previews. You see how it played. Okay, that didn't work. You change. You gotta. It's a living, breathing organism. How many times I've read amazing scripts that are so funny or so great, and then I see the movie and it's like, God, that didn't work at all. And it's because, again, a movie is a living, breathing thing, and it's one thing to read it on the page, but suddenly you have a face interacting with another face, and it's in front of a background that has something about it. Everything changes, and audiences are very much in tune with things that feel too written, or too put together, or too clever, or it doesn't feel like real life. People are really hung up on movies feeling like real life now, and that's why a lot of comedy's not so popular, straight up comedy, because it feels, I think to people, feels manufactured. because it's just too clever and people are acting kind of in a weird place. And it's why, going back to horror, like horror movies I think are the new comedy, because the stakes are high, everything's so, and then somebody does something weird and you're like, oh my God, that's funny. And that's why I love mixing these genres, and that's why all my movies tend to be kind of genre films where I'm trying to be very religious about the genre and then have fun within it with the extremeness of the characters and how they're reacting to each other.
So do you even look at the scorecards, or is it just purely off, like, sitting in the room going, like, where's the laugh?
Well, yeah, I'm much more hung up on I'm not a big fan of. The thing I hate the most in the world is the focus group afterwards. They always make me sit through it, and my wife has to watch me sit there, and I'm just like, everybody has to stop me because I want to, like, yell at the people up there. Because what happens is their pure response means everything. And then when they write their question, is okay, but then now they're being asked questions, and suddenly everybody has to turn into a film professor, and then when you get into the focus group, it always starts out, who liked the movie? 20 hands, and the joke of the moderator is like, well, I guess we're done, ha ha ha. And by the end of the thing, everybody hates the movie, everything hates, because one person's like, well, I didn't understand, and it's always like, what do you like about it? All these nice things, like, well, what didn't you like? I didn't understand that. Yeah, I didn't understand this. And it just falls apart completely. And then the end, would you recommend this movie to your friends? Yes. It's like, oh, God. So why do we sit here for that? So, but, I value everyone's opinion, but I just hear your laughs.
And one of the things that you look at the history of film comedy, and I call it the Margaret Dumont effect. That
I love that already.
Margaret Dumont was the straight lady to the Marx Brothers, and people at the time were kind of like, "Oh, she's not funny. She's there just to be, posh and get Groucho pricks the bubble and runs linguistic circles around her, and Harpo comes in and makes a mess of everything in her life." But you actually look at what she did, and she was brilliant, and she didn't get the credit of how funny she was for decades. And people suddenly went, she's funny.
Yeah.
And there is a long history of bias against funny women in cinema. It's been very hard for, you look back, over the last 60 years, and there aren't many Goldie Hawns out there who could actually were allowed to lead a film.
Allowed to, yeah.
And one of the things you've done is you've put funny women front and center in your films.
Thank you.
Yeah. But how hard was that for you to be able to go like, okay, I want to do Bridesmaid, I want to do Spy, I want to do a Simple Favor, to go like, to make those arguments when there was too much of a history of like, yeah, they can be the supporting.
Yeah, comedy was turned into just a wasteland for women for so long, and it didn't used to be that way. If you look in the 30s, the 40s, you had all these strong, funny women on the screen who were equals, the Rosalind Russells of the world and all that, who were so great, and then comedy became a real boys' club. And it just became about, oh, let's play girls the way they are. They get in the way, and they're just our girlfriends we're going to make fun of. Or this is the wife that tells me you can't do that. All that stuff. And it's just like, so it's like a 15-year-old boy's vision of women, and that happened all through, name the genre, really. I mean, any movie that's an action adventure thing or whatever, the women's parts were always just horrendous. But with comedy, yeah, it got bad, and it's all I ever wanted to do. I mean, I know so many funny women and want to put them on the screen. Unfortunately, Bridesmaids came along. Judd had set that up because Kristen was so funny and knocked up in the little cameo that she had in that. And he likes to just get, especially back then, he was just like, hey, write a movie for yourself. And so she and Annie Mumolo wrote that, and then he knew that I always wanted to work with funny women and put more women's, stories on the screen. And, had me come to the table read, and I saw it, and I was like, oh my God, it's a completely different cast of people reading. And I was just like, oh, this is great. It's such a great vehicle. But then it kind of went away for 3 years. I was busy on stuff, and then Kristen was busy with SNL, and it seemed like it was going to fall apart. And then suddenly I got a call from him that it was alive. So I really credit Universal for just going along with it. It was not an expensive movie for them. And Donna Langley runs, Universal, and she's fantastic. And she, the only thing she said to me right before we started shooting is she said, just don't let it be, what'd she say? It was not gross, but don't let it be, yeah, something like don't let it be gross. It wasn't that, I forget exactly her words, but it was really like, the message was don't blow it. Don't make this, not good. And with that cast, everybody was so good. The only scary thing really was how we were going to do, because so much pressure came on it, and people have heard me talk before. I tell this story before, but just there was, so many female writer friends of mine were going out because they were so inspired that we were going to do this and pitching female-led comedies, and they all heard from the studios, well, we have to wait and see how Bridesmaids does. And it was like, fucking hell, like, don't put that on
pressure.
me. Yeah. I was like, okay, so I'm going to ruin movies for women, like, if we don't do well? I don't think The Hangover, I don't think they said that, well, we're going to wait and see how this dudes on a screen do before we can do this again. So thank God it did well. But, I mean, we were right up until the day we came out, we were predicted to not do well. I mean, we were told you had to make $20 million opening weekend or you'll be considered a failure. And that morning, we did a midnight screening the night before that didn't go well. And they're like, well, it's going to be 13 million. Sorry, it's a bomb. And, all day walking around like, well, I guess I destroyed comedy for women. And then suddenly, like, they say, oh, well, actually, it's going to be 15. It's going to be 17. It's going to be 19. And then Melissa McCarthy and Ben Falcone, her husband, were at our house having dinner. And suddenly I get a text, 20 million, 21, 22. And we're like, fuck. And so we all got in the car and we went down to the ArcLight cinema. And it was packed and rocking. And it was just like the greatest moment of our lives, basically. So and then after that, people just kind of knew that that's what I want to do, and so I don't have a lot of pushback on doing female-led stuff, which is fantastic.
Is there a difference for you between directing people who come from a stand-up background versus people who come from an acting background?
It's an interesting question. You know who's instinctually an actor, but here's what it is. I should say it this way. You have to know what that person's strength is, because there are stand-ups who don't know how to act, but if you go like, I know what your essence is, and if I write this to you or write a situation to your strength, you're going to come in and be good. And all I'll have to do is kind of go, all right, just bring it down, bring it down a bit. Look, there's some people that just can't do it, Somebody just like go completely wooden, But I find that if you tap into the person's essence, they'll bring you something great. You just have to get to the place where they feel real, where they're not acting. That's the biggest thing. Like, just don't act. Just be yourself, and I'll tailor this to you. Sometimes you meet somebody who, like a Peter Sellers type, who is much better going into characters, and that's great. That's their strength. But I think most people are best at playing themselves.
I think one of the interesting things, particularly, you look at Anna's performance in these two films, is, you look at her earlier films. She did a lot of, really fascinating indie dramas, some of which played here, with this kind of, her performances had this nervousness to them, which was really part of the character in films like Drinking Buddies. Yeah. But her early comedy roles, very acerbic. Films like Scott Pilgrim, like, she's just this tiny tornado, and you find a different aspect of that. I was wondering about, finding that iteration of Anna's comedy, which is still very vocal, very verbal.
Yeah.
Her ability to pull in and take up the tiniest space imaginable, particularly next to Blake, who's just like, what?
Right.
I was wondering about that, about finding that different element to Anna that works so well here.
Well, it is playing into kind of who she is in real life. She's a hilarious, acerbic little thing, and it's funny, like when we did the first movie, it was so much like, oh my God, like Blake is actually Anna in real life, and Anna's really Blake in real life, the characters, because Blake is just this like lovely kind of earth mother, and then there's Anna, who's like, she's so funny and sharp and all this stuff, and yet we have them playing the opposites of each other. It's just really playing into somebody's strengths and looking at them and just pulling that out of them and adjusting the script to that and allowing them to become that. It's kind of back to what I said earlier, like just kind of really find their strengths and play to it and don't sit on it, and because like in the one we just did, like I kind of had it in my head that Stephanie's going to come in again, kind of like, oh, I'm really overwhelmed by all this, and Anna's like, well, no, I went through this thing. I put her in jail. I went toe to toe and won. I think I would be much more like going at her. And I was like, you're right. You're totally right. And so we, kind of changed the attitude in the scenes. And, I worked with her and we kind of went through the script and she was 1,000% right, but again, that's that listening and going like, because I'm like, oh, I think you'd play this scared. She goes, no, I wouldn't fucking play it scared. It's like, yeah, what's wrong with me that I would think that? But that's why I think, for getting good female roles on the screen, it has to be a collaboration. You have to have everybody weighing in. You have men and women weighing in so that you're not going to stereotype. And so that's why I just deputize everybody on the set, especially all the women on the set, like, call me on anything. I'm still a guy, I still could pitch some joke that everybody's like, oh God, and be like, no, we wouldn't do that. I was like, good, please tell me, what would you do? Because, I thought it'd be funny and apparently it's horrendous when I just pitched.
But I mean, this is also a thriller, and I won't spoil any of it for anybody, but there is a great kill in this. One of the I was watching it, I was like, this is one of the most fun setups for a kill, and you go hard on that moment.
Yeah.
It's everybody's got, you look at Hitchcock and you say, like, Hitchcock, part of why he works is his kills are great.
Yeah.
You go back and you look at stuff like, way back to Rope and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He knew how to do a kill. And if you're doing a thriller, like, you got to know, like, my kill has to work, and that's as hard as comedy, because otherwise everybody's going to go, I was kind of fine.
Yeah,
I guess,
exactly.
whatever. Then
Well, that was a collaboration, that one, because I say it without giving any spoilers away. It did take place in a shower, and the actor involved said, just make it really over the top. Said, I want everything to go nuts. And I was like, awesome, man. That's all I need, and I'll take it from there. And it was fun to do.
So how do you balance the thriller elements? And how do you make sure you've got enough thriller and it doesn't, and you're not using too many jokes to? Because that was why I think A Simple Favor hit so hard. It was funny and it was spectacular and it felt like you'd given everybody enough space to really be fun.
Yeah.
But you could. It's when things work really well, is say you could pull those elements out and it still works. It's like I was talking to Josh Rubin about Heart Eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And I told Josh why Heart Eyes works is you could take the horror elements out and it's a rock solid rom-com.
Yeah.
It's just the classic meet cute. It's a rom-com that happens to walk into a serial killer movie.
Right.
And I was wondering about that for you, of making sure that the thriller side of it felt good for you.
Well, you have to be true to the genre. The genre is the thing that drives it, and then the comedy comes in on top of that, or actually slides in underneath it, to be honest. It's why, like, a satire of a thriller doesn't really work, because I always have hated the funny toothless villain, and that so many comedies are like, oh, the villain's bumbling too, and you're like, well, okay, what are the stakes then? Because I know he's not, but if he's bumbling and then he fucking kills somebody, and you're like, oh shit, okay, like, he's for real, that's what you kind of have to. It has to be that danger has to be there all the time, but it's really, you got to be true to the genre. And then it goes back to Hitchcock. Like, you got that, your stakes are there and your plotting is there, but then it's how are these characters reacting to stuff? How are the side characters reacting? And what is the extremeness of their interaction that makes it funny? Because you're like, wow, in real life, I don't like extreme characters. I don't like people who are like, well, but in my movies, I love them, because it's too much mayhem in real life. I'm like, what are you going to do that's going to embarrass me out here? But then I get to have all this mayhem happen in a movie because I'm in control of it, and that's really fun. But yeah, it's really just kind of making sure you get that plotting right and don't thumb your nose at the audience that likes the genre.
And I know that sometimes you can go to a place and you're like, you make a film where it talks about the seedier aspect of somewhere. The locals can get very antsy very quick. And I was wondering about, there's a mob component here, and I was wondering about shooting that. Was there anyone Capri was like, no, we don't have the mob here. We don't have, no, that's not us. Like, go back, do that somewhere else, please.
Yeah. Well, they didn't read the script, so we're still going to find out what Capri thinks of this movie. No, you know what? I mean, movies are exciting for people, you know, and people really get excited when a movie is coming to their town. They hate you about a week into it, but, you know, like I said before, but movies are exciting, you know, and it's exciting to get to make movies. It's always funny to me, though, how everybody always wants to visit the set. I'm always like, okay, you're going to be bored within an hour. I'm telling you, no, it's going to be exciting, because people show up, and I always think most people think a movie's shot like a play. You know, it's like they're going to say, oh, I'm going to watch 1 hour of this story. And like, no, you're going to watch me shooting an insert of a phone. And now you're going to watch me getting somebody's feet coming through the door. And now you're going to watch me do 10 takes of somebody saying hello, you know. And very quickly it's like, oh, God, this is boring. And yes, I told you it was boring. But that's the stuff we love as filmmakers. That's like getting those moments right and figuring out how they're going to match together and figuring out our shots, you know, and figuring out, oh, let's try this in this take. You should say it this way. Oh, you know what? Here I have an idea for a joke. Say this, or try this attitude here. That's just, you know, we're never bored on a set. We're constantly, I always say my advice to every new filmmaker is buy a really nice watch, because you're going to be staring at it all day. Because they always have the shot of the director behind the camera, like doing this. It's like, no, this is what you're doing. Every director, like pulling his hair out, because suddenly, oh my God, Dan, we've got 1 hour left. And I thought I had 3 hours left to get this. And it's about schedule, you know, and you know, I always do what are called French hours, they're called continuous hours too, where you shoot 10 hours, there's no lunch, so you don't break, there's food being passed around all the time, and at the end of 10 hours you pull the plug, and you're done. And I think that's the best way to make a movie, personally, because you don't have crews that are tired, they don't see their families, and people don't crash their cars because they're falling asleep on the way home after an 18-hour day, which is ridiculous. You know, but it all comes from the director. The director has to know exactly what they're doing, have to be aware of the time the whole time, you know, schedule your day, have to have a great AD that knows you work that way, and it schedules to that. And you can get a lot done. You know, I get more stuff done in 10 hours than the days when I would shoot 16 hours because we had to or whatever. Everybody falls apart after about 11 hours. I do. My brain just goes boom, down, you know. And you see actors, I can tell in movies sometimes, you go, oh, that must have been the end of an 18-hour day. Everybody looks really tired in that scene.
And I think if you run a kind of, in that way, a more disciplined set, it allows more time for happy accidents for you to go like, 100%. Okay, we've got this safety net built around us, and you can put in things where you're just like, that's spectacular, well, that's really funny.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you about one particular thing, and this is not spoiler-tastic. The hat. The hat. There is. Henry was there last night. There is a hat where you just look at it and just go, that may be the greatest costume decision of the...
I know.
Where the hell did that thing come from? It's amazing.
That is the genius of Blake Lively, because there's a store in Copper, Fiore, where they sell great Borsellino hats, and I just buy hats there all the time. But she went in, and they had this big-ass hat, sun hat. It's like, I mean, it's like this big, with stripes on it, and she came back and said, I just bought this hat. It's so fantastic. Can we put it in the movie? I'm like, that's definitely going in the movie. You kidding me? And my favorite thing is how she navigates the street with that, too. There's one shot where she's walking past the camera, and she just, as she goes past, she lifts it up so you can see her face. I'm like, you are such a fucking movie star, man.
I don't know, everybody concentrates on, on Blake's outfits because they are so, just Vogue cover ready.
Yeah.
I think that Stephanie's costumes are often overlooked, and there's the nerdy side. But I was watching, I was like, the floral print strapped dress it's like, that's an absolutely gorgeous piece of costume.
She looks like Audrey Hepburn walking out
in that
with her sunglasses and everything. No, it's fun.
Something like that. Like, is there a favorite piece of her costuming that you go like, I wish people were talking more about that, because everybody these years later still people are talking about Blake's cuffs.
Well, Anna's really smart about knowing when Stephanie is just going to get completely bowled over by Emily, and when Stephanie can have her moments, and she was very, because I was kind of like, oh, Stephanie should be all glamorous the whole time too, and she was like, no, I wouldn't be. I'm, coming in. I know I'm not going to compete with them. I don't have the money that they have, and she's going to kind of keep her Midwestern mom ethic. She doesn't really want to be there. She kind of got conned into going to this thing. So she brings this nice mix of kind of her normal walking around, her hometown look, but then she steps it up with a couple of nice outfits because she knows she has a couple of nice events to go to. And it's so real to how you would actually do something as being, a Midwestern person going into an experience you have no idea what to expect. All you know is this is probably going to be big and rich. How do I compete? And so it's really, again, that collaboration that Anna was really brilliant about doing that, something I wasn't going to do. So it all goes back to, listening to them and knowing they know what's going to make them the best.
And now you've kind of done a sequel. Is there any temptation to do any more sequels, either to this or to any of your other stuff? Now you've gone, yeah, okay, this isn't as scary as I thought it was going to be.
It was terrifying. It was really unsettling getting the script right. I mean, we threw out a whole script that was greenlit just because I suddenly was going, reading the response of people who were so excited for a sequel, and I was like, this is not what they want, And so we got together with the writers, and we kind of threw out that 70% of what we had and then kind of made it into what it is. So it was really tough, and I tried to kill it many times. It was only because my producing partner, Laura Fisher, just kept going, we have to do this, because I was just scared. I didn't want to fuck it up, and so I'm really happy with how it came out. So, but I don't know, I'm not drawn to do sequels. I mean, it's probably a case to be made for doing a sequel to Spy, just because it's that type of a film that can carry on that way. But I don't know, I like doing new things. It's really fun to challenge yourself. And I like creating original content, I mean, I just did, based on a very popular book, The Housemaid. I just finished shooting that. That's coming out at Christmas with Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried and Brandon Sklenar. And it was so much fun to do that. And that's more of a straight-up thriller, psychological thriller. But, we still find our moments to have fun with it. But it's a heavier story. But it's really fun. It's kind of, I'm going in, that's a direction I hadn't fully gone before. And I had a blast doing it. So, I want to pay off to people who like my movies if they want another thing, but at the same time, I'm also like, do you really want it? Everybody thinks they want a sequel, and then if you're underwhelmed by the sequel, then people are mad that you did it, And I'm a big fan of James Brown, who said, hit it and quit it. And I think if you hit it, man, there's times I go it's great we didn't get a second season of Freaks and Geeks because I don't think we would have screwed it up. I think it would have been great, but, I just like that it's this, perfect little thing. I think it's a perfect little thing that sits there, and, and then you move on and try to surprise people with new stuff and hope they don't get mad at you, I try not to be Joe Jackson, who kind of he was a cool punk guy, then he went into more crooning, and then with this, and people are like, wait, what's he do, And I really admire that, but at the same time, I do want to keep some kind of consistency with an audience, if there's people that if they see my name on a movie and go because they like what I do, hopefully, I don't want to do such a rug pull on them that suddenly wait, why is he doing that? So I feel like my movies, even if they get into thriller territory or whatever, still have my kind of humor in there, and I always try to make everything good-natured at the end of the day. I don't like any movies that kind of say the human race is terrible and you can't win. I always like my good guys to win. That's a big thing for me. And the movies can get dark and we can go in really whack-ass places like we do in Another Simple Favor. But at the same time, I think the message is still one of uplift of yeah, you can win, and that's all I really want to do.
Well, I've got a French hours this. We have reached our time. Paul, This has been just a genuine pleasure. The film is fantastic. Everybody should go and see it. If you've seen it already, go see it again. Take friends.
Yeah, exactly. Tell your friends. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you coming out.